Understanding pathological gamblers and various personality characteristics that they may possess has a number of important ramifications and possible implications for how we work with gambling populations. First of all, pathological gamblers and the various personality profiles that have been identified in the research can help us understand the etiology of how someone might be at risk for developing a gambling problem based on personality characteristics that they may or may not possess. So for example, one of the ones that's been looked at a lot is certainly characteristics such as sensation seeking, impulsivity, and so forth. And then on the other end, if we understand the personality characteristics that a pathological gambler may possess, it can help us in treatment. We can start to allocate or withdraw resources based on personality profiles that we know, especially those personality profiles that might make a particular patient more resistant to change in psychotherapy. And so as we start to understand various personality profiles and various personality characteristics of gambling populations, it's helpful in our work both in terms of prevention and treatment of pathological gambling. That being said, we know from a lot of the research on personality in pathological gamblers that they're not a homogeneous population. Not all pathological gamblers possess certain characteristics or personality traits, as much as we like to sometimes talk about them in very general ways. I think it's also important to stipulate that personality characteristics such as impulsivity aren't necessarily generalized to all domains of a particular individual's life. That's very interesting. That data and that research has kind of emerged in the past decade in the research on impulsivity, that more and more now we're taking a look at impulsivity in the context of domain-specific types of situations. So for example, an individual might be impulsive in one or two areas of their life, but exhibit a high degree of self-control and self-regulation across many other domains of their lives. As opposed to historically, a lot of the impulsivity literature has really just characterized people as being impulsive in general, as though that were a trait that governed their behavior across all contexts of their lives. And not surprisingly, we're seeing some evidence for that in the context of the research on pathological gambling, that we see some people that are very self-regulated, for example, in consumption of alcohol or drug use or cigarette smoking. They're very controlled and regulated in the context of driving records, anger management, and a number of other domains of their life, including eating behaviors and so forth. But when it comes to gambling, they find that they're very impulsive. And that's a new area that we're starting to look at in terms of understanding how we might treat, for example, a pathological gambler that's just impulsive across multiple domains of their life compared to a pathological gambler that is just impulsive in the domain of gambling activities, but otherwise appears to regulate self-control across other domains of their life. So you can see just how specific we can get with looking at just even one characteristic of personality, such as impulse control, and then the whole field of multiple personality characteristics that we can consider and how they would have implications for both understanding the etiology of pathological gambling but also the treatment of pathological gambling. And as the field moves forward, ultimately I suspect what most of us hope for is to be able to understand various types of personality profiles that gamblers may present with in treatment, and then start to custom tailor treatment interventions that specifically consider those personality characteristics and the ways those characteristics interact with gambling behaviors, so that we can allocate resources on a case-by-case basis that are matched appropriately for the level of severity and the various characteristics that a pathological gambler may present with when they come to treatment. And that obviously can help us be more effective in our work with treating and remediating the symptoms of pathological gambling.